Hi, I'm Tina, and thanks for taking time out of your busy day to join me here inside the Divine Joy Circle for another episode of Joyful Connections. And I'm delighted to welcome back one of my regular special guests, Nalini from Chalice of Wisdom and FieldTuning.com. Welcome back, Nalini.
Thanks, Tina.
Yeah, gosh, I would just love to explore a topic that's been coming up into my awareness over the last few weeks or so, and you helped me shift something huge around this the other day. It was awesome. And it's this whole topic of the masculine, feminine, male, female, how it plays out in this difference between gender and the different like double standards for being male or female, and how that's being distorted with masculine and feminine energy, all the entanglements, and often that love, hate, push-pull, inner conflict, and how that can play out in business. I'd love you to talk about that.
Wow. Well, that's a whole big Gordian knot's worth of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, as you and I were speaking the other day, when we did that shifting for you, it's really hardwired, literally hardwired, to use, computer speak, into our DNA. So yes, we have the physical genderized bodies. One has a double X chromosome, one has an XY. Is one better? Well, the arguments about that really stem from the stem cells, where all of this stuff is programmed and has been for, 70 some generations. It's about 5,000 years on this world if you think about linear of space-time, right? So now it's pretty entrenched in the DNA, in the cellular structures. And we're not just talking about the physical gender. We come into this incarnation, we infuse our essence into these bodies, and we choose to have an experience of one gender or the other because that's how biology works on this world, okay? And one set of energies is not better than another. They are all part of the all. They are all part of all that is. And really, anyone who stops to contemplate this will ultimately, unless they are really dogmatically positioned, and some are, they will ultimately get to the point of, energy is energy, source energy is source energy, and it is we, the bipeds, who have boxed and labeled and categorized and fixed what energy belongs with which gender, what energy flows in which way. We have categorized certain things as male, certain things as female, certain things as masculine or feminine. And there are certain flows that are easier within each of these bodies. There are certain traits that simply go with the physiology. But that's really as far as it needs to go. However, one of the questions you asked me earlier was, is every so-called human body on this world programmed in the DNA with this mesh, this mix-up, and all these distortions? And yes. As one awakens, as one becomes more and more of their essence and literally transcends the DNA, allowing consciousness to inform it. Remember Dr. Bruce Lipton, cellular biologist, consciousness informs DNA. I'm so happy he wrote that book.
I know, it was great.
It's like some of us have known this for a long time, and someone wrote it who's a scientist.
Yeah.
Yay. Anyway, all of this, as it transcends, more and more of that drops. And for all of those who have practiced years or lifetimes of egoic dissolution, that's part of what drops in consciousness. What we're all being asked to do now is let this clear in our bodies. So it means the bias, the prejudice, all of this out of the judgment, we talked about that, all of this that comes out of what's programmed into our DNA. So to use an example, men are this way, women are this way. Wow, what a simplistic, judgmental way to think. And any of those categorizations, and in every culture, they exist, and they're different in every culture, which really adds to the cluster. It's just, you get multicultural, and it starts to get really confused. The more that we relax back into the natural world, really in harmony with the elements and the elementals, the more it becomes more clear. Certain things are biological imperatives, the creation of new life by the joining of certain types of energies, right? Seminal, that is just what's inherent on these world and in these bodies. And then there's all the other stuff that's, well, this is supposed to act this way and that's supposed to act that way. And if you don't, you get judged or maligned or disenfranchised. And at the root of all of this that's shifting on the planet right now is that all of these patterns that are judged need to be broken up, and they are being, even if it doesn't seem so right now. There's a huge wave of chaos breaking this up, and everything that is cruel or vicious or mean about this male, female, masculine, feminine interaction needs to disappear. I mean, these are, one could say, if you type them into one or the other, and in a genderized world, it's hard not to do that, right? But these are meant to complement and helpmate one another, not to compete and disenfranchise and make lower than and turn it into a power struggle. I mean, it's been said, this is a world to power, right? And true, but I would clarify that a little bit, maybe just with the source, the transmission that comes through me as well. It's a world for learning and understanding about how energy works. Love is the ultimate power. Light is the ultimate power. Power has bad definitions. Power over, power for. These things are starting to come into the mainstream about how all of this has been twisted and misaligned and, conditioned and really mucked up. All of that is what's leaving. And so right now it can actually appear that things are worse. And we have all these belief systems. Things have to get worse before they get better. You have to have the breakdown before you have the breakthrough. This was all stuff from the last cycle. I mean, all of us, unless you're younger than 4 years old, all of us were born, raised, educated in the last cycle. So why wouldn't we have those things in us? The thing that you were asking about, the DNA, is what's in there that's twisted. Well, all of these relationships. So for instance, if you have the XY chromosomes, then there are patterns in that body, hardwired in that body, hardware, firmware, that says, act this way, treat the XX chromosomes this way. Dismiss or deny, or in some cases worship, but it's all kind of twisted, and then vice versa. If you're an XX chromosome, that's the identifier for the body, and you're looking at an XY, then you're supposed to behave this way or view it this way or react to it this way. And so much of this is unconscious. It's literal lines of code in our bodies that, like what you and I were talking about, is you had done all this clearing work, really feel more androgynous in the best sense, meaning have all of the qualities. It doesn't mean you have none of them. It means you have all of them. You really have source flowing through you. And then all this stuff started to kick up, because we have huge Mars adjustments happening right now. And a lot of what are called, it's the outward flowing energy. A lot of what is called male energy or aggressive energy is shifting right now out of vicious, cruel, and mean and dominating into and controlling into what the truth of that is, which is nurturing, providing, supporting, protecting. Think of the mother bear energy. That's a feminine energy, right? But it's that outward protective, what you might call aggression, that stops the minute that the cub is no longer threatened. There's a difference about that says, no, this is a protection, not malicious, right? There's a difference. And one of the sources of the energy of war on this planet has been this programming, this twisted stuff in our DNA that keeps us competing and in conflict, when the truth of our essence is that we don't need to be doing this at all. We are not built for that. It's why it wreaks such havoc on our bodies. It's like this is not the only thing. There are lots of things, but some of this programming is what causes disease energetically. It's what causes illness energetically. Once it gets into the physiology, there are other things in play. But it's this conflict that really no longer needs to be there.
Yeah, and what I thought was so interesting is realizing the distortion between thinking, embodying the divine feminine or embodying divine masculine, as you hear, being spoken about. And I was like, well, it's all there. Yeah, as long as there's distortion there, that energy is the same as male, female, and therefore gender-based, it creates this incredible inner conflict and tug of war. And if you're not aware of it, then it can keep on acting out in the so-called outer reality relationships, or you'll find it happening within, if you're aware of that. And it was like, I know that when this was coming for me, I was like absolutely gobsmacked, amazed at the intensity of the raging and the resentment and the like hatred and everything that was coming in there. While at the same time, I love masculine energy. I love feminine energy, but I really can think that the distortion there was of the family stories passed down, And I'm thinking, how many are not aware of this? This is fascinating.
Yeah, it's genetically implanted, genetically conditioned, genetically, imprinted, that there are these warring things. I mean, anyone in psychology will tell you, well, there's your family of origin stuff, and you will view relationships the way that sort of your parents related and that kind of thing. That's just one more level of conditioning. And unfortunately, it's the most surface level. It's the one most people deal with. Mm-hmm. And so, that work needs to be done. But there's the deeper stuff that's in the body, where I remember even once a lot of that had been worked through for me, coming on pockets of like that where something would just explode. And I would think, well, where did this come? And it comes from both sides, and you see it in spiritual traditions as well. Like, oh, well, la, 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 we think we have this right, we have a path to God. And every religion or spiritual tradition does have a path to the divine. It's what resonates with anyone. But it's like, well, it excludes this or it includes this. So I agree with you. Like when we're talking divine feminine or divine masculine, we're still typing. We're still making two columns. We're still approaching it from duality. When, yes, is there polarity in this world? Yes, there is. It's a genderized world. It is polarized. Does there need to be duality, which implies a pendulum swing, which implies us and them, which implies either or? That makes me nauseous. It's like, this is the old cycle, and this is what is ending, because the unified field is truth. And we all have energies within us. So it's interesting, as you and I were finding, to find within yourself. Like when in a female embodiment, you find the misogyny within yourself, within what you would call your inner male or your masculine energies. It's just those circuits, those conduits of energy. Oh, look at that. And that's been called patriarchal feminine. There's patriarchal, or there's actual matriarchal masculine, where it's, oh, well, I hate all these things about men, and the male body had in it, and vice versa. And it's all patterns that have been structured to keep us separate, to keep us controlled. And the best way to let that drop is to do the DNA clearing work in whatever way it shows up for you. There are many practitioners, really good ones, and allow your consciousness to permeate your body so that you realize these flows of energy come through my body in all of these different ways.
Yeah, so beautiful. And I mean, the shift, this was also funny because I knew it was like, this was something foundational that needed to pop. Because normally I can see whatever is locking the thing in place. And this one, it was like, I couldn't get it. And then the feeling of the lightness. Oh, it's just so beautiful. But then that made me realize, wow, how is this playing out in business? And you were talking to me before about, some of the clients that you work with, and I've come across it as well, realizing that it's not in public awareness very much as to what's going on with, for example, people who are in CEO positions, and especially if they're men, and in big companies, realizing that they are realizing that things are shifting. Business is not working the way it used to anymore. And it's to do with this masculine, feminine, male, female, everything.
Yeah, some of it is to do with the shift that's happening in general. A lot of it is that, but the archetypes are all crumbling and shifting. And so, I mean, I was in corporate business for years and years, decades, and was a consultant. And so I sort of got to see it all because as a consultant, I worked in a lot of companies instead of just one. And it was interesting to watch the archetypes play out. There were sort of the standard crusty old boys club kind of thing. And a lot of that really is softening because honestly, those men, a lot of them have really good hearts. We're taught to just brick and mortar it, and you don't do that in business. And then there is a reality with business is all about energy. It's just energy. It isn't about the bottom line as much, although you can't say that to a business person really, but it's about resources and about the flow of energy. Energy is the ultimate resource. So if you look at it that way, energy can be moved, energy can be shifted, things can not only be corrected, but if you really go to the root cause, which is the thing, if you go to the root cause of it, it's always energy. There's an energy to be shifted that will shift everything. And what I've watched play out for the decades that I was in the corporate world was, of course, there's the glass ceiling, there's the whole women shouldn't be in business. And it's interesting because not only is that a belief system, but it's hardwired into both masculine and feminine DNA. Even the most enlightened of men, so to speak, and there are some, it's that they would say, oh, I don't believe that. I believe in equality. And they would be speaking their truth. But there's a way where in their DNA, in those, in that Y chromosome, there's this thing that says, no, this is superior. This needs to be on top, in control, dominating. And they might not believe that and not want it, a lot of them, and they suffer for it. And then there's the thing in the double X chromosome, in the quote feminine embodiment, that also has the you should not be doing these things. It's a big should. And mentally, consciously, in energy, everyone will deny this, and have done their own work to stand in their power, whatever those processes are, and they all are good at a psychological level. There's a certain point where it really has to come out of the DNA of the planet. It has to be replaced with light. That's how that will play out. We all know about the whole masculine domination of the feminine in business. But then there's the other side of that where I remember, going into corporate world and moving through different corporations. I worked in lots of banks. So just talk about, brick and mortar kind of thing. But I met a lot of really, really amazing people there too. But it was funny because I met so many women managers, especially in IT. There tended to be more of a balance for a long time. And I met so many women managers who were embodying the principle that in order to succeed in business, you have to do it the way a man does. And it's all in the definition. There are some things, there are skills that someone who has not played on that field, been in that arena, needs to learn. Strategic thinking, an understanding of what benefits the bottom line, what benefits the all. These things must be learned and employed. And a lot of women are really good at them, Because after all, women run the homes.
Yeah.
That's a business, whether anybody wants to do that. But I would see these women come in and try and emulate the male behavior, and it runs counter to their bodies. It runs counter to what goes on in their physical bodies. And so it would be devastating to them, and half the time they wouldn't know it. But I would see these women, you could say, act out worse than the men because they're trying to emulate something that's not only not natural, but it's unconscionable. Yeah. And most would agree with some of the ones who are the worst actor-outers in the male or female, genders. They would agree with that. It's like, no, one doesn't treat another human being that way, right? Regardless of the circumstance. This is the kind of behavior I'm talking about. And then you have the flip side of those who would just, dismiss her, she shouldn't be in the room. And then you have the things where, in the IT companies I worked in, a lot of them where it really didn't matter, except for maybe, one or two people. But it's this hardwiring that's in there that's unconscious. It's more the unconscious behavior. Consciousness is changing. This is a good thing. So many men who have these lovely, delicious, what you might call feminine energy flowing through them, or be more balanced in their feminine side. I mean, I don't usually use male and female, as you know, so it's a little strange for me to talk in these. Like, energy is energy, and let's go from there. But, but these things do show up in business. And what's happening now, what I notice now, a lot of the work I've done over the last almost 30 years now has been to bring more of an awareness of the great mother energy, which is business needs to move into expressing, and this might seem counterintuitive to those who are focused on the bottom line, but it really isn't. You're thinking energy, and it's the shift of energy that will support business going forward, are the qualities of nurturing, nourishing, acknowledgement, support, and cherishing. And does that mean business goes all touchy-feely? Well, probably not in this lifetime, although somehow, but irrelevant. That's not the point. Business is business, and things have to get done, and that's the way it functions. It's all very clean and pristine and precise when it's done from appropriate energy. It's all about the appropriate flows of energy, and it's shifting business into that which is life affirming. Now, does that make it feminine? If that's your definition of something feminine, then I suppose it does. This universe has been said to be feminine only because we ascribe the qualities of nurturing, nourishing, life supporting to femininity. Why don't we just, say that those are what they are? And then the universe does that, and it comes from the infinite field. And this is where business needs to come from now. And it is shifting. It may not appear that way, but it is shifting to where it's not just the game of, who dies with the most toys, or boys behaving badly, or any of that stuff. It's not, it's that way in a lot of places still, but I think that what's going to be found is that the playing field, the foundation under that, has been the rug's been pulled out. And that type of behavior, if it's perpetuated, is just going to sink into the mire or fall apart. And you and I have talked about how so many entrepreneurs get this. There's not an entrepreneur I've ever met or heard about who does not work off of intuition. The brilliant flashes of illumination that are genius come from intuition. Is that feminine? Well, it's a quality. Is it feminine? I don't know. That's your definition. Is it? I say directly from source. You can call it whatever you want to. So it's this new way of doing business where as we do business, because that's the modality of interaction sort of in the world for energy exchange in the form of commerce. As we do that, it needs to become life affirming. It needs to become that collaborative dance of, wouldn't it be cool if? And the qualities in each of us or this group or whatever come together, and they flow, the way a river flows or an ocean current. There's a rock there, it flows around it. And some droplets make it and some don't, and the teams shift and change. And there's nothing wrong about that. It's not good, bad. It's the energy shifting and our need as a species to flow with it instead of to try and control it. Life affirming business is that which promotes nature, the environment, environmental awareness, green building, those kinds of things, the protection of the waters, the elimination of pollution and of, toxic waste, all of that kind of stuff. That stuff, that's just physical and mean to the planet that is the mother of our bodies. And so those energies that not only need to stop, but the programs to come out of our bodies so that we stop creating that in our environment. Whatever runs in your physical body energetically projects into your physical world. It is an extension, your experience of it, not your creation, but is an extension of what's here, of what's inside, what's literally running in your body. Once that's really gone mainstream, or once everybody really understands that, it will change everything. It's like a whole society, communities at first, societies built around what is life affirming, what raises vibration, what shifts frequency, what shifts everyone's frequency bundle, which is another way to talk about your assemblage point or config file or how you're put together, whatever terminology you want to use. The more that shifts, it extrapolates what we would call externally, but it has to go into that realm of business where we interact, maybe not just on a handshake just yet, because we're not quite there. In some areas we are, but from this place of understanding that This is an energetic commitment that has integrity and that has balance, and that is going to, yes, promote the welfare of each company, each individual, and not be about the bottom line, but maybe what actually is sustainable. Not even the highest good. There are a lot of lofty ideas about that, and everyone has a different one. So how's that going to work? Yes, it's the right intention, but maybe not so practically applicable in this arena. But I feel like this is for what's sustainable for our bodies, for the planet, for our children, for our grandchildren, for 7 generations. Then business becomes life affirming, and then it will take off and be successful. And all of this shifting and turbulence and chaos will start to smooth out. And then we might even see the weather change a little bit.
Yeah, it's like peace and calm on the inside, and wow, we may have peace and calm reflected in the environment. Yeah, it's
she's going through her shifts, but we contribute to that. And a good place to begin, it's everywhere. We need to begin everywhere. It's sort of where we are right now. Everything needs to shift everywhere, but wouldn't it be great to have a new business paradigm, so to speak, or a new business that isn't based on witch hunting, that isn't based on what's wrong, that where root cause analysis becomes, there's an energy shift that needs to be made. Let's make it. Let's change this into what is life affirming and sustainable and good for us in our world. Yeah. And that possibility is now, and we may or may not live to see it happen all over the world, but there's a good chance.
So I have 2 things. One would be, that's a great example that when you let joy be your guide, and you let yourself be aligned with what is joyful for you, then you're contributing whatever uplifts you in this new way of business. That's exactly what that's calling for, that everyone can just be really expressing their joy, right? And then the other thing I'm just curious about is this something, this was like, oh my gosh, this is one of those things, I guess, that once it's clear, then you realize, how the heck did I not see that before? And like, how could any... This is like so foundational. Yeah. Is that just a matter of that the whatever the shifts have happened before led up to this being possible to be released now? Or is it a matter of the energy supporting it at this time that this can finally come out?
Well, it's all that, isn't it? I mean, all of us who participated in the last cycle did so consciously at some level, and did so, one could say we did it to learn things, but that's an agenda, and agendas leave when we leave the body, and then we say, oh, well, that worked out this way. It's like taking a course at university where you're not really sure. You may have to take it because it's part of your program, but you're not really sure whether that was of benefit or not. Some lifetimes are like that. The last cycle was all about martyrdom and domination and control, and some of us were curious. I don't think many of us are anymore. Those of us who were clear about our curiosity, it was like, oh, okay, well, that's why that functions and how it functions, and maybe not so interested anymore. So yes, it's partly the progress of what has gone before on this world. You have to think it's only one of many. And then there's also just the cycle shift has shifted the foundational energy radically, and it's continuing to shift during this time, as we've talked about. And so that is supportive of what's new and what is life affirming and what is spirit based, divinely based. Whatever words you use for that, you're probably right. And just it is based in that. We must come from that sacred space, and then everything will be different. And there is support for that now, and in this world with the genetics and all of that as well, it has been helped by what's gone before.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. I just think, oh my gosh, things are shifting so fast now. Seems that way anyway. It's like, wow, just at such an amazing pace. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I can hardly wait to see where we'll be like equinox time comes around, and oh my gosh, a few more months and this year is over. Like, wow.
I know. Yeah, well, it's interesting. There are little games one can play. I did an intensive over the weekend, and talking about, it was all about the assemblage point shift and the shift on the planet right now. And there's a little game you can play, which, like, between this equinox and one in March, there are two eclipse windows. It's a huge chaotic transition. It's incredibly turbulent, but there's a game you can play where just be in the flow of your energy. See yourself as a streaming being. You know, we all understand streaming, right? It's like, see yourself as a streaming being, because that's closer to the truth. And then ping, or, you know, touch into how your being will look and feel mostly toward that second equinox, toward March. Then as you do that, ask that bit. It's, you know, psychologists call this talk to your future self. Well, since your future self exists within the all, it's really easy to do, actually. But, you know, it's just right there. They'll talk to you. But it helps to look at your energy and using your inner sight, using your internal knowing, or just quiet time, whatever. Feel that energy and then bring that here now, because you're literally plucking it from, you know, the infinite and saying, we'll bring a little of that here. And then if you do it again, you'll notice, oh, that looks a little different now. We'll bring a little of that here. It's what's possible now, and focusing that, and then watch what shows up. You know, that's the fun part. The more you let source, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, flow through you, and you come from that place in each thing you do, the more everything shifts and changes. And all of those things out there, your future selves will morph and shift and change as well. Your future experience, which is really what we're talking about, will morph and shift and change as well, and continually. And you can kind of refine that process by just checking in with it. Well, how would this look to that energy configuration? You know, if you project your ego onto it, well, how would this look to that me in this personality then? Well, you won't be this personality then. So that's a pointless exercise. But, you know, it's like, look at how that shifts. Look at this configuration. Look at that one. Oh, wow. Well, let's bring some of that here. Let's pluck that and bring that in and integrate it. It speeds the process up.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's fun. And that's part of it, isn't it? It's like really connecting and allowing yourself to just have fun with it, and to let that childlike curiosity come out in a way like, oh, the sense of wonder, you know, I wonder what we can play with here. What will we discover there? And maybe it's just the default habits of having sludged through, you know, all the muck of the last whatever. There's always like a sense of like, oh, you need to shrug off that so that you can really allow yourself to play again, and that be the experience. Yeah.
Hose that off.
Yeah. And just, yeah, one last thing. I just, you said something the other day. I thought that was just a really beautiful thing, ties in with this new way of business. And when you're talking about many people saying, oh, for the highest good of all, and you offered a refinement there to be in service of essence, whatever will serve. Yet.
Okay. Yeah, I remember now. Okay. It's like, you know, well, it's when some people will say, well, I want what's in the highest good of all. And the funny thing is, because the intention of that statement is always to surrender it to source, but you have to remember that there's still programs running in your body and in your unconscious that are filtering it and saying, well, this means this, and we're going to slide that in there. And you can ask source to override that, which helps. Or you can say, well, I want this to be, you know, in my highest service, or I want this to be in service. But you have to remember that as source comes through you, you want this to be what resonates with your essence, what is in service of your essence, what is fun and joyful, which is what we were talking about, for your essence, for the source that you are, not for your ego.
Yeah.
You know, the ego will sneak in there and try and co-opt it, because that's what it was designed to do. It's not bad, it just is. The ego will say, oh, well, I want this, what is for what resonates with me and my agendas. It's like, no, what will work going forward is what really resonates with your essence, what's fun and joyful for your essence. Because if you keep creating what's joyful for your ego, you're going to find that it isn't.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, but it's such a beautiful, it's seemingly maybe a small tweak, but it makes such a huge impact. And I think it's kind of fun to think, well, the new way of business, we're talking about DNA. This is really about a new DNA of business that is life affirming, and by allowing yourself to tap into what is joyful and what supports your essence in the most joyful way. It's like, wow, this is really cool. Oh, awesome. Wow, we covered a lot here. This is really, really exciting. And I would just, maybe if you have final words, something that you'd like to share before we wrap up our call here, and, to sum up this whole topic of male, female, masculine, feminine, new way of business.
Okay, that's good. I said earlier, it's a lot of ground to cover. I mean, the basic thing, the main thing that's the key right now is let all those old definitions, those old concepts go. Let them dissolve. There will be nuggets in there of truth. There always are, or we wouldn't build concepts around them. But let Source show you what those are. Let Spirit light that up for you. Let the Divine take that over, and then let those be the seeds that grow the new cycle for you, that show you what your resonance is. So dissolving the concept of male, female, masculine, feminine, what's business, what isn't, what power is, and let Source show you what is life affirming, love affirming, what really grows corn for all of us, what is going to support the next wave, or the many generations, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, wow. Well, for everyone watching and listening, I invite you to just share your comments, your insights, maybe feedback, if you have any questions about this juicy topic here today. And, I would love for this conversation to be shared, because there's so much wisdom in here. As I said, that insight of realizing that that's in the DNA, and unless that shifts, then it's going to keep playing out, is huge. So please share the video, share the podcast, leave comments. Let's get this conversation spread and be engaged in it. And let's see what we can create together, what can unfold here, So, thanks, Nalini, for taking time out to be here and to share with us. I love these conversations. And until we meet again, go forth. Let joy be your guide to a life that's worth waking up for every day, and many joyful blessings.